I'm 72 years old, and there are things I wish someone had told me when I was young. For most of my life, I thought being a good woman meant saying yes. Yes to the husband, yes to the children, yes to the parents, yes to the friends, yes to the boss, yes when I wanted to say no. I thought that was what love looked like. I thought that was what strength looked like. I believed that so fully I never stopped to test it. I was wrong. This is my story, and it took me 72 years to understand. But before I share my story, I want to share a small gift. I'm giving away a copy of my best-selling book, Self-Heal. To enter, simply like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments why you'd love to win this book. I always enjoy reading your stories. Now let's get started. I spent 6 decades trying to be perfect, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter, the perfect practitioner. I put so much energy into being the person everyone expected that I lost sight of who I was. What I received in return was not peace. I received tiredness that sat in the bones. I received small resentments that grew teeth. I received a life that, when I looked at it, felt borrowed. 7 years ago, a great change came. My husband died after many years together. With him gone, there was a silence I had never known. For the first time in my adult life, I was alone in the deep way that means no one else arranges your day for you. I felt afraid, not only because I missed him, though I did, but because I realized I did not know who I was without that role around which I had folded myself. I had been someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's helper. I had been the person who organized holidays, took phone calls at odd hours, smoothed disputes, wiped faces, kept the calendar neat. Those roles gave me purpose, yes, but they also kept me small. They kept me safe from facing my own wants. When I stood in front of the mirror after he was gone, I did not recognize the woman who looked back. Her face had the map of a life given away. She looked tired. She looked used. She looked like a woman who had spent her days making space for others and had forgotten to take up space for herself. Let me tell you about the slow disappearing. When I was 22, I married. It was 1968. The world around us moved in a way that told women to choose marriage and home and to let other things wait. My mother said words I have heard 100 times since. A good husband is all you need. Everything else will follow. I believed her. My husband was kind. He worked hard. I became what was expected. I cooked. I cleaned. I raised the children. I supported his career. I smiled when it was polite to smile. I kept my thoughts about important things to myself because replying would be rude or disruptive. I was not unhappy in every part of my life. I loved my children. I loved the small hours when the house was quiet and a book fit in my hands. But there was always a voice inside asking, "Is this it?" I learned to ignore that voice. I told it I would listen later. When I was 35, I wanted to go back to study. I had always loved literature. I dreamed about teaching, about being in a classroom where ideas were spoken and tested. I told my husband. He said we could not afford it. The children needed me, he said, maybe later. Snorts. So I waited. When the children grew a little older, I asked again. He was thinking about retirement then. There were plans to look after his parents, bills to manage, health checks to attend. Maybe in a few years, he said. I waited again. At 55, his parents had passed. I thought, now it is my time. I felt the thrill of possibility. But soon our daughter separated from her husband. She had little children who needed me. How could I leave them? I could not. I stayed and I shelved my plans again. That pattern is familiar to many women I meet. It is easy to justify. The needs are real. The reasons are true. But the effect is that life slides by like water over a stone. You keep polishing other surfaces until the stone under your feet is worn down. When my husband died at 71, there was no one left to wait for. The waiting stopped because there was nothing left to wait for. The silence in the house felt heavy at first. Then it felt like an opening, and I did not know what to do with it. A year and a half after he died, I found a letter he had written to me before we married. He wrote about my intelligence, my curiosity, how he could not wait to see what I would become. He believed in a future for me that I had forgotten. I sat on the floor with that letter and I cried. The girl he had loved was still there under the layers. She had not been stolen all at once. She had slipped away in small steps, saying yes when I meant no, shelving classes, choosing comfort and safety over risk. I had told myself I was being selfless. In truth, I was shrinking into a shape that fit everyone else. That letter was the hinge on which my life turned. I made a choice. I was 72. I chose to stop waiting. I enrolled in classes at the local community college. I took literature, art history, a little philosophy. I walked into rooms where the students were mostly younger. I listened, I read, I wrote. For the first time in decades, I felt the thrill of learning for its own sake. It is a simple thing, but it made the day bright. It made me feel like a person again, not a role. I also returned to aspects of life that feed the body. Years of looking after others had left me with habits that were not kind to myself. I began to pay attention to food in a different way. I had trained as a naturopath and had always believed in the value of simple whole food. But when life gets busy, it is easy to pull a packet from the cupboard. I started to cook for myself with the care I used to offer my patients. I walked each morning. I practiced simple breath work when anxiety rose. I sat in the garden and learned the names of the plants I had kept for years without looking closely. You do not need to change your whole life at once. For me, the change came in small steps that added up. I booked a single short trip, a small town by the sea I had read about. I went by myself. That first trip felt like stepping into a place that had been waiting for me. I met people who lived differently. I ate with strangers. I came home with new stories in my pockets. I also began to say no. Saying no is a habit. It is not rude. It is honest. At first, it felt clumsy. My children would call and invite me to things that fit into their schedule more than mine. Sorry, I have plans, I said. Friends asked me to help in ways that would drain me. No, thank you, I said. I practiced short answers and simple refusals. The world did not collapse. People adjusted. I felt lighter. I am 72 now. I know who I am. Not simply a wife or mother. I am a practitioner who still enjoys teaching, a reader who loves old novels and essays, a woman who gardens, who travels, who keeps a small sketchbook. I enjoy my own company in a way I had not before. I say yes when I want to and no when I do not. I make plans that are mine, and yet I carry a quiet regret. I wasted time when I believed the safe option was the best one. 60 years of putting myself last left a trail. I cannot get those years back. I cannot reclaim the mornings when I might have been in a classroom or the evenings when I might have written pages. That truth is heavy. It is also useful. Regret teaches. It teaches urgency. So let me be specific about what I would tell a young woman if I had that chance. I will not dress my advice in slogans. I will give concrete steps because those are the things people can act on. First, practice saying no in small ways. Take a week and note every time you say yes out of habit. Choose 3 things to refuse that week. It could be a meeting you do not need to attend, a favor that drains you, or a social event that leaves you tired. You will learn that you can refuse without being unkind. Second, find a class and sign up, not later. Not when the house is quieter, not when the career is settled. Pick a short course, writing, art, a language, anything, and show up. Learning keeps the mind active. It creates new connections. It gives you stories to carry into your relationships. Third, keep a small fund for yourself. Money is often the reason given for waiting. Put aside a small amount each month, even if it is modest. it adds up. This fund is for classes, trips, for time when you need space to make a change. It is a visible reminder that your life matters. Fourth, practice simple morning routines that belong to you. I am not talking about elaborate rituals. I'm talking about 5 minutes of quiet, a short walk, an intentional cup of tea. These small acts anchor you in your day. They make it harder to dissolve into other people's plans. Fifth, keep books on your nightstand that feed you. Let the books be your teachers when the world tells you to be small. I suggest literature that asks questions, novels that watch people make choices, essays that push you to think. Reading widens the place inside you where your own desires live. I say these things as someone who trained in natural health. I have seen how stress and constant giving harm the body. I have seen patients come in with tired adrenals, frayed sleep, poor digestion, and the deep ache that comes from living a life for others. The body knows. It will tell you with symptoms when your life is out of balance. Listen to it as you would listen to a child. The message is simple. You must be cared for. I also want to speak to the women who fear change because they have invested time already. There is a belief that leaving a role is waste. It is not. Skill and care are not lost when you choose differently. The time you spent raising children or supporting a partner gave you patience, discipline, and a capacity to love. Those things will serve you in every new path. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from experience. You may think, but what about family? What about duty? I answer, duty is not opposite to the life you want. It simply asks that you make room for both. You can be present for family and live for yourself. You will be a more patient parent, a kinder partner, a wiser friend when your life is not resentful. One memory I carry is of a patient who came in with a long list of sacrifices she had made. She had never taken a holiday without her children. She had never been apart from her partner for more than a week. She felt drained. I asked her to take one step, book one night away by herself. She told me she was afraid. She went and she returned with a photograph of a sunrise and a note that said, "I am here." She had rediscovered a small self that had been waiting. The changes I made were not heroic. They were practical. I booked classes, I cooked, I walked, I paid attention. I said no and yes in ways that matched my truth. I did not wait for permission. I will say that again because it matters. No one will hand you permission. You must give it to yourself. If you worry about money, start small. If you worry about time, start tiny. The first step is usually the hardest. Once you take it, the next step is easier. There are days I feel a sharp regret for lost years. I think of the woman I might have become if I had been braver earlier. I do not dwell in that regret. I use it to fuel what I do now. I write letters to younger women in my head. I plant seeds, I teach, I encourage. If something I say helps one woman sign up for a class or say no to an obligation that squeezes her, I have done work that matters. Younger women often tell me they feel overwhelmed by choice. There is a truth in that. There are more options now than there were in my youth. That should be a relief, not a burden. More choices means more opportunities to make a life that fits you. Use them. I do not pretend this is easy. It is rarely easy. Setting boundaries causes friction. Choosing yourself will bring criticism. But the alternative is a long giving that drains you until you do not know your own face in the mirror. I would rather live a life that is true and a little loud than a life that is quiet and borrowed. So here's my plea. If you are 20, if you are 30, if you are 40, do not wait on the calendar. Do not let years accumulate while you promise to yourself that later will be kinder. Live now in small, true acts. Learn. Say no. Make a fund. Travel once. Dance badly in your kitchen. Read out loud. These are not frivolous. They are the pieces of a life that belongs to you. If you are older and have put off your life, It is not too late. I am living proof. The change is slower when you have long habits, but it is possible. Start with one small thing and build. The brain and heart are responsive. They will reward you. If this reaches you and you think it resonates, pass it on. Not because I need your applause. Share it because there are women who do not hear this plainly. There are women who think their dreams are selfish or impractical. Tell them it is not selfish to want a life that fits you. I will close with a small practice I give to every patient who says they have no time. It is called the 10-minute ritual. Each day, set aside 10 minutes for something you choose. No phone, no chores. Read for 10 minutes. Walk for 10 minutes. Sit in quiet. Call a friend. Do a small stretch. 10 minutes a day becomes 7 hours a year. That is enough to start learning, enough to start changing, enough to keep the self from vanishing. You have one life. It will be full of duties and love and requests. It will also be the only life you get to live. Make small choices now so you do not wake up one day and count the years that slipped by while you were waiting. The permission is granted. Go and live.